Good day folks, Sean here from Air Photography. So this is my beginner's guide for the new DJI Osmo Action 4. In this video we're going to go over all the aspects of this camera, including how to mount it and of course how to use it. We're going to stick to the basics to get you up and running with your new camera quickly. It's a very easy camera to master and it can actually capture some really stunning results. Now this video could get a little bit long, so you may want to bookmark it so you can come back and reference it later. With all that said, let's just jump right in and get started. Now there's several different packages you can choose from when purchasing an Osmo Action 4. Right here in front of me I have all the components that come with the Adventure combo. I think that's the most economical and it's going to be probably the best bet for most people. If you decide to purchase the base camera kit, you can always purchase these accessories later on when you need them. So in today's video we're going to be using the Adventure kit to demonstrate, but it doesn't matter which kit you purchase. The camera itself functions the same, so you can follow along no matter which one you've purchased. So let's take a look at everything that comes inside the Adventure kit. First of all, here we have a frame. Now your Osmo Action 4 can be mounted inside. It will offer a little bit more durability, but ideally you really only need to use this if you want to use the vertical mounting. And we're going to take a closer look at that when we get into the mounting options. We have a type USB-C to USB-C charging and data cable. We have a curved adhesive mount. You can see here we have the adhesive at the back. So this can be mounted to anything with a curved surface, such as a helmet. And then on top of that, we have our finger mounts. And again, we'll take a closer look at that when we get into the mounting section. We have 2 thumb screws. This is how we're going to attach the Osmo Action 4 to the different mounts and accessories. We have 2 magnetic mounts. And you can see they're slightly different. One has a little bit longer finger mount on it. Also in the Adventure combo, we get a battery charging case, and your batteries are going to be stored inside there. With the Adventure combo, we get 3 batteries. If you've purchased just the base kit, you'll have 1 battery. And in a minute here, I'm going to show you how to charge both ways using the charging case, and if you just got the base kit, how to use the camera to charge it. You can see we have lights on the front here. Green means that they're fully charged. Yellow means that it needs to be charged. When the lights are off, if you just want to check quickly, you just have to press the button at the front there and it's going to illuminate them. On the side here we have our USB-C port, so that's how we charge the batteries inside the case. And the other interesting thing about this case is it can act as a power bank. So for example, if you have batteries in here with a full charge, you could plug this into your smartphone and add some extra juice. The other nice thing about this battery case is that it just acts as a nice case. You can throw this right in a camera bag, plug it into a power bank, and you can charge while on the go because the lid there keeps everything nicely secured. And lastly, I don't know if you can see it there, but at the top there we have a spot to hold 2 memory cards. So if you have extra memory, you can store them safely in the top. And then lastly here with the Adventure combo, we get an extension pole. We have our finger mount at the top. There's a 1/4-20 at the bottom, so if you want to attach this to a tripod, you're able to do so. But it's just a nice extension pole. Sorry, it's a little bit wet there. I had it in the water yesterday. And it's great for if you're vlogging and you just want to get a little bit of extra reach, or if you're doing something intense and you just want to get a nice full wide shot, you can use your extension pole. And in its closed state, it just makes for a nice handle if you're just doing some handheld filming. So let's go ahead here and we're going to take a look around the camera. You can see we have our lens here at the front, and this is removable. So if it does happen to get damaged, which they can, from time to time, it does come off and you can buy replacements right from the DJI website. Just take precaution when removing it because when it's off, it's no longer waterproof. On the front here where it says Action, you're going to notice a little opening right in the O. That is a color temperature sensor. Now that's nothing you really need to know about, but just some people ask what that is. And that just helps you capture really accurate colors. Over here we have a front-facing screen, and unlike a lot of other action cameras, this is actually a touch screen. So you can actually change settings, change filming modes, all from this front screen. On the side here we have a door, and to open it, what we have to do is press in and push up, and you can see it opens up. And another interesting thing I should point out here, whenever you see red, that means your camera is no longer waterproof. It's a little safety feature they add in. So if that door is open a little bit and you see red, you know that something's not right. When we open the door, we have the compartment for the battery and for the memory card. And we're going to take a closer look at that here in a minute. On the other side, we have another door, and this is basically our charging port. And again, you can see red there. That means it's not waterproof when that door is open. We can use this USB-C port for charging the battery that's inside the camera, but we can also use it to connect to a computer and transfer media files via a tethered cable. Above that, we have our power button, and it's also our quick switch button. So we use that to power the camera on. When the camera's on, we can actually just press it once, and that will cycle through all the different filming modes. And again, we'll take a closer look at that here in a minute. At the bottom here, we have our magnetic mounting system. And again, we're going to take a closer look at that here coming up. And finally, on the back, we have our large touchscreen. This is how we get a preview of what we're filming and how we input all the different settings and preview what we have filmed. So let's go ahead here and we're going to talk about how to mount your Osmo Action 4 and the magnetic mounting system. As I already shown you, they do come with these magnetic mounts. And you can buy extra of these, and it's something I do recommend doing. What makes this magnetic mounting system very convenient is you can move your action camera from mount to mount very simply. But in order to do that, you are going to have several of these mounts. They're not very expensive, and usually I think a good amount to have is maybe 3 to 4. It's all going to depend on how many mounts you're going to be using on a regular basis. Basically, the way they work, they have very powerful magnets in them, and they also have 2 little clips on the side for safety. So when it connects, you just want to make sure that it clips in and you hear those clicks. When it's on there, it's very secure. There's no way that's coming off. To remove it, you just have to press in the 2 tabs on either side there, and then it just pulls away. So as mentioned, you can go from accessory to accessory very quickly. Take it off your extension pole, put it on a head strap or a chest mount. Now let's go back to the frame here. One of the unique features of the Osmo Action 4 is that you can mount it vertically if you want to capture content for social media, things like TikTok, Instagram Reels, even YouTube Shorts. In order to mount it vertically, you will have to insert the camera in the frame. What you're going to do is just slide it in from the front. Just make sure the shutter button there at the top is lined up. You just put it in and then clamp it down. When it's in there, you still have access to the bottom magnetic mount, as you can see there. But now you also have the option of mounting it vertically. So again, if you create social media content, that is a really great feature. When it's in the frame, you still have access to a shutter button at the top there, and the power button and quick switch. You also have access to the charging port. So whether you use this frame or not, it's completely up to you. Like I said, it can add a little extra protection if you happen to drop it or it takes a hard knock, but the screens and the lens are still going to be fully open and susceptible to damage. So now let's go ahead, we'll talk about how to charge your Osmo Action 4. There's 2 different ways to do it as mentioned. First off, you can use the charging case. You can charge all your batteries inside this case, or you can use the camera itself, or a combination of both. Now, one thing that is not included when you purchase your Osmo Action 4 is a charging brick. Here I have an Anker one, so you will have to purchase one or use one that you already have. Ideally, you want to use at least a 30-watt charger if you want to make use of the fast charging capabilities. Now, if you have a charger that's 100 watts or 60 watts, you can safely use those higher wattage ones as well. It will only charge it at the max rate it's capable of. So to use the charging case, you can have all 3 batteries installed, you can have 2 batteries or even 1 battery, and it will still work. Even in this situation, you can see I have 2 batteries that are already fully charged, only the one needs to be charged. You can still plug it in, you just plug it into that USB-C port at the side there. When that battery is fully charged, it will turn green as well. Now, as mentioned, the other way to charge your batteries, and this is how you're going to have to do it if you purchase just the base kit, is you would use the camera itself to charge the batteries. But let's go ahead here. The first thing we're going to have to do is install the battery. So we'll open up that side door, and you just want to line up the pins. You can see there's this indentation, so just look inside of it and you'll see which way it goes in. And just press it in until you kind of hear it lock in. Then we can shut that door. We're going to go to the other side and open up the door with the USB-C port underneath it. And again, we're going to do the exact same thing. And then we're going to take the USB-C cable that was provided and plug it into the port. And what you're going to notice is a green flashing light at the front there. That means the camera is charged. Once it's done charging, that'll stop blinking. Now next we need to install some memory into the camera. The memory that I like to use is the Extreme Pro from SanDisk. There's a lot of different compatible memory cards. DJI has a list on their website. I just like this memory card. I use it in all my devices and I've always been really happy with it. And you can use whatever size you want, 64 gigabyte, 128, you can go up to 256. Myself, I like to use 128 gigabytes and then keep a second spare 128 gigabyte card. Instead of having it all on one 256, because if you ever get a problem with your memory card, it becomes corrupt and you're out on vacation, you always have a backup. Now to install the memory, we're going to open up the side door where the battery is installed. Press that button and then open it up. And you're going to see a little tiny slot there at the side of the battery. That's where we insert the memory card. Now it can be a little bit fiddly, especially if you have really big fingers, but you just want to place it in, and you're going to put the graphic side towards the back screen. It will only go in one way, so if it doesn't go in, don't force it, just flip it around if you have it backwards. Once it's in there, we're just going to press down gently until we hear a click. Sometimes you have to use your fingernail or something to get it down in there. And then that's it. Close the door, and now we're ready to go. Now before we can use our DJI Osmo Action 4, there's a few things we need to do first. The first thing we need to do is activate it. The camera does have to be activated before first use, but we also have to update the firmware. DJI releases firmware that can fix problems, enhance existing features, and add brand new features. So it's a good idea to always update the firmware. In order to update the firmware, we're going to have to download an app called DJI Mimo. If you're using an iPhone, you can download it from the Apple App Store. If you're using Android, I do believe you have to download it directly from the DJI website. So let's go ahead and we'll walk through getting everything activated and updated. Now before we can do any of that, we have to power the Osmo Action 4 on. And to do so, it's as simple as pressing the power button on the side there. You're going to notice the front screen came on and then a little chime was played. Now just for reference, to power it off, what we're going to do is press and hold the power button. You don't want to do a quick press, you want to do a press and hold until you hear that chime, and then it's going to power off. So once you've got the Mimo app downloaded, you're just going to go ahead and launch it. If this is the very first time you're owning a DJI product, you will need to create an account. It should detect your Osmo Action 4 right away. You just want to hit the connect button, and then it's going to prompt you to connect to the Osmo Action's Wi-Fi. Once you've done that, a prompt should come up for you to activate the camera if it's brand new. Just follow the on-screen instructions. Once that is complete, it's going to prompt you that there's new firmware to install. Again, just click on it and follow the on-screen instructions. It could take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to update the firmware. You'll get a notification that it is complete. Now, once you're done activating the camera, you don't need to use that Mimo app in order to use the camera. However, it is a very handy companion app for the camera. You can use the Mimo app as a remote. You can use it to get a live preview of what you're filming, which can make it handy to frame your shots in some scenarios. You can change settings on your Osmo Action. You can transfer media, view media, and it has a lot of really handy built-in editing tools. And we're going to save that for another video. But it definitely is worthwhile to keep around. So I'm going to zoom the camera in here so we can see a little bit more of the menu system as I explain it. So at the top here we have a battery icon, and we can actually click on that and it gives us a percentage. So you can use both icons, either the percentage or just the one visually, to see how much power is left in it. At the top left hand side, it shows us how much space is left in our memory card. Now that will change depending on what mode you're in and the information that it displays. Now on the left hand side here we have a little play button. That's how we can preview media that we have stored on the memory card. If we click on it, you can see it takes us to our last shot video, but we can click that icon at the very top there, the little squares, and that gives us a grid view of all the content that's on the memory card. From this menu we can select a video, we can play it, we can use the scrub bar at the bottom to fast forward through it. We can click that volume button there and adjust the volume. You can see we have those 3 dots at the side there. We can swipe from that side. We can add it as a favorite, or we can delete it. If we go back to the grid menu, we can batch select by pressing that little icon at the top right hand side, and we can select several video files, and that allows us to do batch deleting or batch adding as a favorite. Below that we have a little icon of a video camera. That's signifying we are in video mode, and we can also use that little button there to change filming modes, and we're going to take a closer look at that here in a minute. At the very bottom it says 4K 48. That means I'm filming in 4K at 48 frames per second. And as we change our resolution, if I change that down to 30 frames per second and I turn on stabilization, you'll see that information has changed as well. And I know I went through that really fast, but we're going to take a closer look at that coming up here in a minute. Now, if we move over to the other side, we have our digital zoom. If we press and hold, you can see we can zoom in up to 2 times. Now just keep in mind that it's only digital zoom, so when you zoom in, you are going to degrade the quality. And finally, at the very right-hand side in the middle, this is how we can change various settings. We can change our field of view. There's different settings there, including putting it into Pro mode, and that allows us to adjust many different things such as shutter speed, the type of color profile. But again, we're not going to get into any of that in this basic tutorial. I'll maybe make a more advanced tutorial on how to use that. And one last thing we can do here is swipe down from the top. That's going to bring up our settings. You can see here we have some quick buttons just to do very basic tasks. The first one at the top there, that's our custom profiles, and we'll take a look at that here coming up. We have a quick switch button. We can adjust the brightness of the screen. We can lock and unlock the orientation. We can lock the screen. We can enable voice commands. Again, we'll take a look at that coming up. And the other interesting thing we can do here is change the behavior of the front screen. If we take a look at it, you'll notice it's just a zoomed in square. And ideally, that's how I like to use it because it kind of draws things in, makes it a little bigger so it's easier to frame your shot. But if it's throwing you off and you just want to see exactly how something is framed, we can press that button and it turns off the full front screen. And as you can see there, we now have a traditional 16:9. So for some people, they may find that more beneficial to make sure everything is framed correctly. And to get to the rest of the settings, we just press that icon at the top right-hand side. And that has all the more fine-tuned settings. Now we're not going to go through all of this in this video, but definitely I would go through them, see what they do, because there are some handy settings in there. Now if you want to use the front screen as a touch screen, you can only have one active at a time. For example, this is the one we have active right now. If we go to use the front screen, it's going to give us a message that we need to swipe to unlock it. So to do that, we just swipe up. So that has unlocked it now, and we can go ahead and change our settings. And you'll notice if we go to the back screen, if we go to use it, again, it's now locked. So to unlock it, we just swipe up. That's going to unlock the back screen and relock the front screen. So in this next section, we're going to talk about how to switch to the different filming modes. There's actually 3 different ways in which we can do it. The Osmo Action is capable of capturing all different types of content: video, photos, time lapses, hyperlapses, and there's 3 ways that we can switch back and forth between the different modes. The first and the simplest way is just to swipe anywhere on the screen from the middle out. You can see when I swipe, it brings up a menu. And we can go from photo to video, slow motion, and time lapse. The other way to do it is click on that icon in the bottom left-hand side, like I mentioned. That's going to bring up the menu system, and then we just have to swipe. Now, the last way to switch modes is by using the quick switch. Now, you can configure what is displayed in quick switch. Right now, I only have video and photo mode in mine, but I'll show you how to adjust that later on. So you can see when I press it,
photo, video, photo, video.
So you can see there you can switch back and forth very easily. The next thing I want to talk about is video resolution and frame rate and how to change it. And this kind of also goes into slow motion. I'm not going to go into detail exactly how that all works. I did make a video last year about slow motion and frame rate and how to utilize it. To change our frame rate and resolutions, we can either just tap on that at the bottom there, or you can even just swipe up. And that gives us our options here. You can see we can adjust from 1080, 2.7K in a 16:9. We have 2.7K in a 4:3. We have 4K in a 6:9. And we have 4K in a 4:3. That 4:3 and 16:9 is your aspect ratio. Most of the time you are going to be filming in a 16:9. That's kind of standard aspect. But some people like to film in a 4:3 as it does give them a little bit more editing flexibility. The other thing we can choose is our frame rate. You can see we can go all the way down to 24 frames per second. And in 4K we can go up to 120. Now, for the most part, when you're filming, for me anyways, I like to film at 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second. 30 frames per second is standard. That's what most like YouTube and everything plays in. The reason I like to film at 60 frames per second sometimes is that allows me to slow my footage down by half without losing any quality. And that's where it gets a little bit complicated about frame rate. And like I said, I don't want to get into that into this video. And you can even go up to 120 frames, and that will allow you to slow it down by 4 times without losing any quality. You'll notice if we switch it to 1080, we can now go all the way up to 240 frames per second. So that's just all personal preference, and you'll have to decide what works best for you. Now, they actually have a slow motion mode in here. It does make it a little bit easier for beginners, and we will take a look at that here coming up in a second. So that's basically the frame rate and the resolutions and how to change them. Now, from the same menu, there's 2 other things we can do. We can enable loop recording, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. But that is a handy feature, and a lot of people make use of it. Basically, it just kind of overwrites the same video file, and that way if you're waiting for some action to happen, if you're filming something, you don't have to worry about your memory card running out. But the more important thing we can do here is change our stabilization. All we have to do is hit the RS at the top there. Right now that means it's using rock steady stabilization. And from here we can change the level. We can turn it right off if you don't want any stabilization. And it's good to do that if you've got your camera mounted stationary. If you've got it on something like a tripod, you don't need stabilization. And that's going to give you a wider field of view because it doesn't need to crop in order to stabilize it. But for everyday filming, you're probably going to choose rock steady. That's still going to give you a fairly wide field of view and give you really good stabilization. The next one up here is called Rock Steady Plus. Basically, it's going to give you an extra layer of stabilization, and that can be very important if you're, say, you've got this mounted on a mountain bike and you're going down some extremely bumpy conditions. You might want to enable Rock Steady Plus. The thing to consider, though, is that when you do use Rock Steady Plus, even though it will be more stable, it is going to crop in a little bit, so your field of view is not going to be as wide. And it just depends on what you're filming. For some people that won't be important. For others that just doesn't work. Now the next one here is horizon balancing. And this one is kind of interesting. What that does, it'll keep your horizon perfectly balanced, even if the camera turns all the way up to a 45-degree angle. You can see in this demonstration here, as I'm turning the camera, the image is staying perfectly level. Once you get past that 45 degrees, then the horizon will start to tilt. So when filming in 4K, those are the 3 types of stabilization you can use. However, if you film in 2.7K, we get an extra stabilization mode. So let's go back to our stabilization. You can see this new one popped up called Horizon Steady. So it's similar to Horizon Balance, but Horizon Steady allows the camera to turn a full 360 degrees, as you can see in this demonstration, but the horizon will stay perfectly level. So you can see that could come in very beneficial in some situations. Again, the thing to keep in mind is that it is going to crop in fairly heavily, so it's not ideal for all situations. So moving on here, I will touch base on this quickly. I don't want to go too much into depth with it because this is just a beginner's guide. We'll save this more for a more advanced tutorial. If you want to use the camera in full manual mode, to do that, we're going to press those buttons on the side in the middle there. And this kind of gives us a few options, but what we're going to do is enable Pro mode. And from here, we can adjust things further. For example, we can go into white balance, and it's set to automatic white balance, but we can go over to manual white balance and adjust things ourselves. And same with exposure. Right now we're in auto, but we can put it over to manual. We can adjust our ISO there on the right hand side, and we can adjust our shutter speed. We can adjust the color profile. Right now we're in normal, but we can do D-Log M, which is 10-bit as well. And basically you would only shoot in that mode if you want to do your own color grading. And the other important one there, but that's available even in non-pro mode, that is your field of view. You can go ultra wide, wide, or we can go standard with D-Warp. Basically that gets rid of all the distortion, but it's going to be cropped in quite a bit. So it just depends on what you're filming and what suits you best. Most of the time when I'm filming, I film in either wide. Wide doesn't have too much distortion, but still gives you a nice wide field of view. And some things I will film in standard with D-Warp if I don't want any distortion. Let's get into how to capture content. And there's 3 different ways in which we can do it. The most common way is just pressing the shutter button at the top. And depending on what mode you're in, it's going to take that type of media. For example, if we're in video mode, it's going to record video. If we're in photo mode, we're going to take a photo. If we're in time-lapse or hyperlapse mode, it's going to record the time-lapse. So all we have to do is press shutter button, and you can see that it's now recording. And to stop recording, we'll press the shutter button again. The next way to do it is voice control. You can actually control your Osmo Action 4 with your voice. It's got 4 basic voice commands. Now we do have to enable that first because it is disabled by default. To do that, we're going to swipe down and we're going to turn on that icon there for voice control. And basically once that's enabled, we have a few commands we can say, such as start recording. You can see there it's now recording video. We can also say stop recording. The other thing we can do is say take photo. So you can see there, even though we were in video mode, it switched us over to photo mode and took a photo. And if we were to say start recording, you can see here it switched us back to video mode and started recording. And the last command we can do is shut down. You can see that will go ahead and power off your Osmo Action 4. Now you'll notice when we enabled voice recording, it put a little icon at the top there at the right hand side, so that way you always know it's turned on. Now if we go to our settings, if we go to the main settings here, you can see we have an option there for voice control. Again, we can enable and disable it there. And it also allows us to switch the language. But the other nice thing is if you're just new, it actually gives us a list of the voice commands in there. So you can see start recording, stop recording, take photo, and shut down. So it's a good way to reference the different voice commands. So I'm going to power the camera off here and I'm going to show you the third way to capture. It's a feature called snapshot. And basically with it, you can just press the shutter button when the camera's powered off, and it's going to power the camera on, start recording right away. And when you're done recording, you press the shutter button again, and it's just going to go ahead and power off the camera. So that's good if you just have to capture something quickly. You don't have to worry about powering on the camera, selecting the mode. You just have to press record and it's going to start filming right away. And you can configure the behavior of that feature in the menu, and I'll show you that here after. But let's just do a quick demonstration. You can see here I'm just going to press the shutter button. You can see it turned on and started recording. And it's actually very quick. It's actually quicker than a GoPro. You'll see here when I press the shutter button again, it's going to automatically go ahead and power off. But it gives you a 3-second window that if you don't want it to power off, you can touch the screen there and it won't shut off. So let's go in and I'll show you how to configure that button. By default, it's set to use the last filming mode you were in, but we can change that if we go to our settings and we go to snapshot there at the top. And this is where we can set the behavior. We can use last setting, we can have video or hyperlapse. Myself, I like to leave it at video because usually if I use that feature, that's what I want to capture. So now let's talk about custom modes and using the quick switch button, because it's actually a really nice feature of the Osmo Action series. So as mentioned, we have this quick switch button, and when the camera is powered on, that's going to cycle through some predetermined menus.
Photo, video, photo.
As of right now, I only have photo and video added in there. But we can configure that if we swipe down to bring up our settings and we go to the quick switch button. You can see here we have some things we can do. First of all, we can get rid of the voice prompt if you find that annoying. Personally, I kind of like it. And we can configure it to switch screens.
Screen switch.
You can see it
Screen switch. Screen switch.
So the first time you press it, it's going to just switch the screens back and forth. If we press it again,
Screen switch. Photo, video.
you can see then it will start cycling through the menu. So let's go back to that. And here we can add some of the different modes. So we can add slow motion, we can add time lapse, we can add hyperlapse, we can bring up our playback. So we can configure that quick switch button to do what we want it to do. But the really nice thing about that quick switch button is it can be used in conjunction with custom modes. And custom modes basically allows you to make your own custom settings for filming modes that you use quite a bit. For example, say you film at 4K 30 a lot, but you also film at 4K 60, but you like stabilization off because you're putting it on an FPV drone or something. We can configure that so we don't have to go in and change the settings every time. So let's so right now let's set something. Let's do 4K 16:9 at 30 frames per second, and we have rock steady enabled. If we swipe down from the top, go to our user up there at the top, right now you can see it says C1. So if I hit the plus button, it's going to add that setting to the C1 button, or the C1 placeholder. We'll hit confirm. You know you're in your custom mode because that little icon in the bottom has a little C1 in it. Now let's change that. Let's do 60 frames per second. And for this one, we're going to have rock steady, or how about horizon balancing? Now when we go back to the user icon, we can now add it as a second option there. So now it's C2. So now that we've added that, when we change different filming modes, you can see we have the two new ones there. We have C1, C2, and then our regular ones. So it's a quick way to make custom modes and switch back and forth. But the really nice thing is you can use that in conjunction with the quick switch. So if we swipe down and go back to our quick switch settings, you can see we have these new C1 and C2 listed there. So we can add them or take them out. You can really configure how that button works. So really a great feature of the Osmo Action series. Now just a couple quick more things here before I go. First of all, let's go into photo mode. And you can see here the menu system changes adapting to the photo mode. And we have a couple different options here that we didn't have in video mode. So let's click at the bottom there to bring up our settings. You can see we can set the aspect ratio of our photos from 4:3 to a 16:9, depending on what you like best. But we also can add a countdown. So we can turn that right off, but we can also add a 0.5 second, 1 second, all the way up to a 10-second timer. So that's really good because that way you can press the shutter button and then get in front of the camera. So you can set that to whatever works best for you. Again, we can go into Pro mode and adjust all the different settings if that's something you want to do. And lastly, let's go to slow motion. As mentioned, this is a great way to capture slow motion if you don't know a lot about how frame rates work. And we can click on that and we can go up to 4K. And there it'll show us that we can only film at 120 frames per second at 4 times speed. If we go to 2.7K, again 4 times at 120 frames per second. And lastly, if we go over to the time-lapse setting, we can actually capture 2 different types of time lapses here. Let's click on the button at the bottom there. You can see we have the option here to do a time lapse, traditional time lapse. That's basically if the camera is going to be mounted stationary, if you want to get like clouds moving or people moving. But the other thing you can do is do a hyperlapse. That's basically if the camera is going to be moving. Say you have this mounted on a chest mount or you're holding it in your hand, you can get some really dramatic shots. And we have all different settings on what we want the hyperlapse, how fast we want it. Usually I just leave mine in auto, but again, that's personal preference. The other thing we can do is adjust the resolution. You can go all the way up to 4K. So that's basically it. That's the functionality, the basic functionality of the camera. There's a lot more we can do with it, but I'm going to save that for more advanced tutorials. Transferring content from the Action 4 over to a computer or your smartphone is very easy. There's a couple different ways in which we can do it. The first off, as mentioned, we can use the Mimo app. We just connect it wirelessly like you did when you activated the camera. You go to Album, and then from there you can download your content. The other way to do it is by tethering the camera to a computer or your iPad or your Android device. Just plug the USB-C cable into your device and it'll pop up as a hard drive. You can then copy all your content over. And the last way to do it, and it's my preferred method, is just pull the memory card out, put it into a card reader, and then plug it into the device that you want to transfer it to. It'll come up as a drive, and then you can just copy all your content over. I find that tends to be the fastest way, especially if you've got a full card. Doing it wirelessly can be a little slow, but pulling the card out is quick and simple and very fast. Well folks, that was my beginner's guide for the DJI Osmo Action 4. It is a great little camera, and in my opinion, probably one of the best action cameras you can buy right now. If you are brand new to this camera and you're just learning it, make sure you're subscribed to my channel, as I'll be making a lot of different tutorials going over some more advanced features to help you get the most out of your camera. I want to thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and got some value out of it. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up if you did. It's always greatly appreciated, and we'll see you in the next one.